Hi, Marina. So how are you? How was your spring break?
Good, and you?
Yeah, it was good. I get a spring break with everybody else when that happens. So, okay, where do you want to start here? On 7?
Yeah.
Looks like you've done 1 through 6, although it doesn't look like you've done 4.
I only have to do 4 of each group, so I did 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
and yeah.
Okay, so looks like you want to do 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Mhm.
Okay, let me move that over there. Let me bring up one moment. All right. X squared plus 12x. How are we going to complete the square for that?
Um,
Let me just read the instructions.
divide by
Complete
divide
the
12 by
square,
2,
then factor the trinomial. Okay, that's the first step. And then what?
and
So
then well that equals 6, and then you have to find the square root of 6.
actually the
So
square of 6, not the square root. In
yeah,
other
sorry,
words,
the square.
we're going to add 36 to the
Mhm.
expression. Okay? And by doing that, we can now write this as a binomial squared. In other words, that's x plus 6 quantity squared. And so the purpose of completing the square is so that we can get it into that kind of an expression. And only by adding exactly 36 can I get it to this.
Okay.
Okay? Now, that's all they want you to do on this one? Then
Yeah,
fact.
I
Okay,
just need to
so,
get the factor.
right, this was step 1, this was step 2. That's factored. I mean, that's equal
Yep.
to x plus 6 times x plus 6. So, okay. Let me move this down a little. So x squared minus 18x. What are we going to do here?
Divided by 2.
Okay.
Which equals 9, and then 9 times 9 is 82,
81. Okay.
or maybe 81.
Huh? Always remember that when you're multiplying something by 9, the result adds to 9. Notice that 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. The 1 and the 8 add to 9. 9 times 3 is 27. The 2 and the 7 add to 9. So you can always check when you're multiplying something by 9, make sure that the result adds to 9.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it is kind of a nice way to memorize your nines tables. Okay, so we're going to add what?
81.
Okay, and then factor this.
X plus 9 squared.
Let's talk about factoring again. In order to factor this, we start out with x and x, then we examine the sign on that. And the fact that it's positive means that this has to be plus plus or minus minus. And to know which one it is, we look to the sign on the middle term. Since it's negative, this has to be negative, negative. Okay?
Okay.
What's the rest of it?
Uh,
I want factors.
minus 9 and minus 2.
No, it'd be minus 9 and minus 9. In other words, I need these last two numbers to multiply together to give you 81. And minus 9 times minus 9 is 81. That's how we got that in the first place. So when we're completing the square, we're always going to end up with same factors. In other words, you never complete the square and then end up with x minus 9 times x minus 4 or something. It's always the same two expressions. It's because it's the way we complete the square. When we take half of this term and square it, that guarantees that we're going to get two equal factors. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Now, none of these was an equation, I notice. So it bothers me a little bit. And I'll tell you why it bothers me. If we start with this expression, number 9, okay, so what's the next step?
Are you doing number 9?
Uh-huh.
Divide 20 by 2.
Okay, then what?
Which equals 10, so you do 10 times 10, which equals 100, so you add 100.
Okay. And then what does that factor into?
X minus 10 and x minus 10.
Correct. Again, once you find this term, you know this term is the same. Okay. Okay, and then number 10. The only thing that bothers me about this process, I don't like taking expressions and adding numbers to them because we change the expression. Now, if this was an equation like that, now I'm going to add a number to the left side and add a number to the right side and complete the square like that. And then that would be a valid mathematical thing. It bothers me a little bit to just be adding numbers to these expressions. I guess if that's what she wants you to do, that's what you should do. But it makes more sense in the next section where we're solving an equation. But let's go ahead and finish number 10. What do I do here?
Divide 30 by 2.
And then?
And then 15 times 15.
And then square it. What you're doing is you're taking half of this coefficient and squaring it. What's 15 times 15?
225.
So what does that factor into?
X minus 15. I mean x plus.
Right. In other words, this means they both have to be the same, and this is what they have to be. Okay. All right, let me bring up, so we should go to 13?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now we have something that can best be solved. Well, maybe not best be solved, but we're going to complete the square and we're going to do everything mathematically sound. So on the left side of the equation, how am I going to complete the square?
You have to find half of 4x, which is 2.
Half of 4. Yeah, just half of the coefficient only.
And then you square it, so you get 4. So you add 4.
So I add 4, but I have to do it to both sides to balance everything. In other words, it's perfectly fine to add 4 now to this expression as long as I can add 4 to the other side. I didn't really like doing that to the other ones because we didn't have an equation. So now I can rewrite this how factored?
x plus 2 and x plus 2.
And I'm going to write it like this. Okay? Because now we have a pretty good way of solving this. How do I solve this equation?
Finding the square root of both sides.
Okay? So when I take the square root of the left side, I get x plus 2. What do I get when I take the square root of the right side?
3.
Plus or minus 3.
Plus.
And the reason it's plus or minus is that notice that plus 3 times plus 3 is equal to 9. But minus 3 times minus 3 is also equal to plus 9. So the square root of 9 actually is always plus or minus its square root. Okay? And it's meaningful here because it's actually going to give us two different answers. So when I solve this, what do I get?
X equals 1 and x equals negative 5.
Yeah, let's lay it out. Plus or minus 3 minus 2, which is plus 3 minus 2 or minus 3 minus 2. This answer is 1. This answer is minus 5. So both of these answers should be true. And if we go back and we look at the original equation and plug in 1, I get 1, because 1 squared is 1, plus 4 equals 5, so that one works. Now let's try negative 5. Well, if I substitute negative 5, what's negative 5 squared?
Positive 25.
Plus 4 times negative 5, which is minus 20. So we have 25 minus 20, and that equals 5 also. So both solutions work. Now, they don't always. Sometimes you end up with what is called an extraneous solution, where when you go to plug it back into your original equation, it doesn't work. It doesn't make the thing an equation. So you kind of have to be careful with that, although not with these type problems so much. You start getting into absolute values or radical signs or logarithms or anything like that, and that's where you start picking up extraneous solutions. So let's look at 14. Okay, help me solve this from the start.
Is that number 14?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Divide 8 by 2.
Okay. Then what? So what we're doing is
then do 4 times 4.
Well, here, this is the way you want to think of this. We're taking half of the coefficient, we're squaring it, and we're adding it to both sides of the equation. That's the correct answer. Half the coefficient squared, added to both sides of the equation. Excuse me a second. So half the coefficient is minus 4. Squared is plus 16, added to both sides of the equation. Now how can I rewrite the left?
X squared minus 8. Oh, you mean in...
Yeah, we're going to... In other words, we could write it as two factors, but we know we really want to write it as one binomial squared. What is that binomial?
X minus 4.
Okay. And what's the next step?
Find the square root of both sides.
Okay, so what's the next line?
X minus 4 equals 5.
Not quite. You left out a very important part. When I take the square root of 25, what do I get?
5? Oh, plus or minus 5?
Notice that if you only got 5, you would only have one solution. X would be 9. But with a plus or minus 5, it gives you two solutions. So now X is equal to plus or minus 5 plus 4. Now what two numbers does this result in? What's plus 5 plus 4?
9.
What's minus 5 plus 4?
-1.
Those are your two solutions.
Oh, okay.
Okay? You see how we do that with the plus or minus 5? Notice that if we'd have used only the plus 5, we would have only found the 9. We wouldn't have found the -1. So that plus or minus is a vital part of the problem. Okay, let's look at number 15. Now they've specifically asked us to solve this by completing the square. So what's the first thing we need to do before we can complete the square?
Subtract 8.
Right. Let's get that constant out of the way. That's just going to mess things up. Okay, now what?
Divide 10 by 2.
Okay. How did I say to express this? Take half.
Take half of the constant,
The coefficient.
and find,
Square it.
square it, and then add it to both sides.
Okay, so what number do we want to add to both sides?
25.
So I'm going to add 25 to that side, and I'm going to add 25 to that side. So now the left side can be written how?
X minus 5 squared.
No, there's no minuses. This is a plus, and that's a plus.
5.
Okay? Now what?
Find the square root of both sides.
Okay. It's the right side.
X plus 5.
Hold on a second. We're taking the square root of both sides. We just took the square root of the left side. What's the square root of the right side? It's not a whole number, so I have no problem writing it like that for the moment. But
2.5.
still need that plus or minus. So in other words, this was the next step. In other words, when you're writing this, when you're showing your work, this is the preceding step and this is the next step. You've taken the square root of both sides. So now what's x equal to?
X is equal to plus or minus the square root of 8 minus 5.
Okay. Not quite done yet. There's a couple of things we still need to do. We need to express both answers, and we need to simplify this as much as we can. Can I simplify square root of 8? In other words, I don't want to turn it into a decimal. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not sure what she wants you to do. Does she give instructions here? Does she want you to, yeah, she leaves it in radical form. See how this answer shows here?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're looking for, something like that. Okay? So we have to reduce, simplify square root of 8. What's the square root of 8 equal to?
2.5.
No, what I mean by that is square root of 8 is equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, which is equal to 2 root 2. So this is simplified. In other words, I don't want to express it as a decimal. I want to express it as a simplified radical. 2 root 2 is, you're never going to find root 8 on a multiple choice answer list. But it would always be 2 root 2. So our answers are plus 2 root 2 minus 5 and minus 2 root 2 minus 5. And in case those look like strange answers, they're not. That's a perfectly, I don't need this plus sign, but that's a perfectly fine way to express these answers. And in fact, notice that the way they do it in here, they would express this as minus 5 plus or minus 2 root 2. So they would give the answer like that. Notice that they put the minus 5 in front, like they did in this example problem. Oh, hold it. Maybe oh, I see. There's an error in here, huh? What could it be? Wow. You don't have to do 19, do you?
No, I don't.
Because I don't see the error. I was looking at it to try to see the error. I don't see it. 40 is 2, 40, the square root of 40 is the square root of 4 times the square root of 10, which is 2 root 10. It's also plus or minus. They add 6 to both sides to produce this answer. This looks perfectly fine to me. I don't see the error there. That's odd. Okay, let's see. We still have 16 to do. Let's do 16. Maybe you can help me out on 16 and tell me what that number on the right side is.
16?
Is it? Yeah, number 16. What's that?
-10.
That's negative 10. Okay. So we've got x squared plus 6x minus 82 equals negative 10. Okay, work me through every line here.
Plus 82.
Okay, so what's the next line going to be?
X squared plus 6x plus 9.
Hold on.
Equals,
Okay, first of all, let's finish the equation. In other words, the first step was to add 82 to both sides of the equation. So I still need to add it to the right side. I didn't do that yet.
negative 10 plus 82.
Which is?
72.
Okay, so now we're here. In other words, what I'm attempting to do is to show you that we're not changing this equation. I didn't change it at all. Not at any point. I've merely moved this 82 to the other side. Okay, now we're going to complete the square on the left side. So what's the next part?
Find half of the
coefficient.
Coefficient. Then square it and then add it.
Okay.
So it'd be 9.
Okay, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides of the equation. Now what's the next step? Why do we complete the square? Right, we complete the square so that I can factor it as a perfect square. What is that perfect square going to be?
X plus 3 squared equals 81.
Okay, what's next?
Find the square root of both of them. So it would equal x plus 3 equals 9.
Plus or minus 9? You will lose points if you don't put that plus or minus in there, I guarantee you. Okay, so what's x equal to?
X equals plus or minus 9 plus 3.
Minus 3.
Minus 3.
So what are the two numbers? Maybe what they didn't like in this solution over here, it just occurred to me, was this answer. Maybe they want a specific two answers, not the answer expressed in a single way like that. In other words, they would not like this answer that we just gave them. So let's give them an exact answer. What's one value for x?
6.
And what's another value for x?
Negative 12.
There you go. So I think that's what they want. Okay? All right. So that's completing the square. Next one we got to do is 20.
Yeah, that's my last problem.
Okay. This is a word problem. Whenever you have a word problem, the first thing you want to do is come up with variables and list them and label them. So the product of two consecutive even integers is 120. What should I let x be? How about the first integer?
Okay.
Because so all I know is I have two consecutive even integers. So what's the second integer going to be? If x is equal to the first integer, what's the second even integer? How can I express it as a function of x? I don't want to call it y, because that introduces a second variable that we don't need to introduce. But if I have integers that are consecutive, that's what they mean. So if x is one of these, what's the next one? X plus 2.
Oh, okay.
Always. So x plus 2 is the second integer. No matter which integer is x, if the first integer was 10, then the next integer is 10 plus 2. So these kind of problems, remember that odd and even integers, it's always x plus 2. If it's consecutive integers, then it's x plus 1. In other words, if they would have said the product of two consecutive integers is 120, then the first integer would be x, the next integer would be x plus 1. But since they said even integers, it's x plus 2. So write an equation. She misspelled an. I can't help but point that out. Write an equation to find the integers. So what would that equation look like if the product of these things is equal to 120?
I don't get it.
Okay. If I say the product of two things, I'm I mean one thing multiplied by another thing. Okay, so when they say the product of these, they mean x times x plus 2 equals 120. That's what that word sentence comes to in an equation. In other words, when you take word problems that always have to be converted to algebraic equations, this is a perfect example. Define our variables and then write the equation that fits this sentence. The product, the multiplication of these two things is equal to 120. Now find the integers that they're talking about by completing the square. Okay, so what's the first step going to be to make this resemble the problems we've been doing?
Yeah, sorry, I still don't get it. Like,
Well, let's multiply these out. So if I take x times the quantity x plus 2, remember this is the first integer, this is the second integer, and they're consecutive. One is immediately on the number line after the other. That's why I know it's x plus 2. And the product of the first one times the second one is equal to 120. Notice I don't know what the integer is yet. I just know that
figure out what x equals?
I'm going to. And I'm going to do it by completing the square. But at the moment, I don't know what x is equal to. I just know that it's some even integer. And then if you take that integer and multiply it by the next even integer, which has to be x plus 2, their product is 120. So here's the equation that fits. Now I have to solve this equation. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is distribute. So I'm going to multiply x times this to get x squared plus 2x. Now how can I solve this? How have we been solving this? It says find the integers by completing the square. So let's complete the square.
Half of 2 is 1, so you'd add 1.
Okay, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. And now I can restate the left side. How? Remember, the whole point of completing the square is to be able to restate this as a binomial squared, so that I can then take the square root of both sides of the equation and solve for x. Okay?
Okay, so, factor it. Okay, so it'd be x plus 1 squared.
Right. It's always going to be x plus whatever half that coefficient was. Notice that when this coefficient was 6, our final answer was x plus 3 squared. So you can do it by shortcut. If you just remember what half of that coefficient was, then just write that, and it's the whole thing squared. So now what?
Find the square root of both sides.
Okay, so what's the next line?
X plus 1 equals...
Think. 11 times 11 is 121. But what is the answer over here? What's the square root of 121? Plus or minus?
Oh yeah, plus or minus 11.
Okay. So what are my two answers?
Uh, 12
Well,
and 10, negative 10.
11 minus 1, so that's 10.
Oh yeah, sorry, minus 1.
and then minus 11 minus 1, which is minus 12. Okay, now let's see if both of these answers fit their sentence. If x is 10, what's the next integer? 12, right?
Yeah.
In other words, x plus 2 would be 12. So those are my two integers that work. They multiply to give you 120. Well, this says also that my first integer could be minus 12. If my first integer is minus 12, what's my next integer?
Negative 14.
Negative 10. Remember,
Oh, yeah,
we're
'cause it's
adding
negative.
2. We're
Yeah.
adding 2. So minus 12 plus 2 is negative 10. Do these two numbers fit the thing? Yes, they're two consecutive even integers, and they multiply to 120. They multiply to positive 120.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So it's important here to understand that it says find the integers. Well, there were actually two sets of them. 10 and 12 were the first two, and minus 12 and minus 10 were the next two. Notice that is a little different than the two answers we got for x. Remember that there were two different answers for x, which means there are also two different answers for x plus 2. That would be 12, and this x plus 2 would be minus 10. So here's the first set of integers, 10 and 12, and here's the next set of integers, minus 12 and minus 10. It's bound to be a little confusing since when we solved for x, we got 10 and minus 12. So how do I get four answers from that? Well, remember that there's a second integer. All we solved for was the first integer. And we had two different first integers. Okay.
Okay.
You got anything else?
Nope, that's my last problem.
That's it? Okay. You've done 4 out of the first 6. Okay, you didn't do number 4.
No, I could though.
Is that a C?
Yeah, you have to find what C would be like. So you have to find half of the
Okay.
little number. I forgot what it's called, and then you multiply it by 2, and that's
So
what
C would be 16 for number 4?
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. All right. Okay, well just remember those steps. They were exactly the same every time we did it when we completed the square. You need to remember that when you take the square root of a number, the answer is always plus or minus. Not once did I hear you say those words today, plus or minus. So you need to get used to answering plus or minus when you take the square root of both sides.
Okay.
Okay? All right, Marina. Let's go ahead and call it a session. And let's see. I'm looking on the calendar here. I wanted to let your mom know that I'm going to be out of town next week from Thursday through Monday. And
Okay, let me go get her really fast then.
okay.
Mama, here. Okay.
Okay. Hi, Rosina. I just now see where you've scheduled a couple of sessions for Saturday. That's good because as I was telling Marina, I'm going to be out of town Thursday, April 11th through Monday, April 15th. I've got it blocked off the schedule, so you can't schedule anything during those days.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know I was going to be out of town, and if you if you wanted to schedule something for next week, you might want to, but maybe you've already done it by the 2 appointments for this Saturday.
I did for one for Joel and one for Marina.
Sounds
and I might
good.
do one on, I don't know. You're here on Wednesday, correct? You leave till Thursday.
I am, but I can tell you right now that everybody,
You're
as soon as
booked.
they spot this, it'll get booked. It's pretty booked
Yeah,
now. It's booked from 3:30 on already. So
Okay.
that's why I'm kind of trying to give you early warning on it.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll see about Marina's homework on Monday and Tuesday, and then maybe we can book something. If not, till the following week.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Rosina. I'll talk to Marina on Saturday morning at 10.
You bet. Thank you so much, and I'm sending your check. I just wrote it today, so
Okay.
you should get it tomorrow for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.